Now, turning to our program, please welcome Alex Chu, Realtor at Keller Williams Realty, who will introduce our speaker. Alex.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. What to do with 794 is one of those generational decisions that deserve a lot of attention and discussion. A few weeks ago, we heard from representatives of the Department of Transportation presenting various alternatives for 794. But the truth of the matter is that they were originally contemplating just the status quo, reconstruction with a few minor improvements. Then a bunch of forward-thinking architects, real estate professionals, and planners from 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin took it upon themselves to ask the question, do we really want a road that bisects downtown and helps everybody to bypass it? Or does it make more sense to reclaim the space and connect downtown at grade level with the lakefront in the Third Ward? Calling themselves Rethink 794, they garnered enough public support to cause the DOT to backtrack and add various alternatives, including replacement of the elevated freeway with an at-grade parkway. Today's speaker, Taylor Korslin, will be presenting the better world that lies beyond the current 794. Taylor is a design architect for FCGA Architecture, a commercial architecture firm. He's also co-owner of Lucky Clover Irish Pub in the Steinmeier building on MLK next to the Wisconsin Cheese Mart, and a board member of the Downtown Neighbors Association of Milwaukee. Taylor received his bachelor's degree in architectural studies from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and his master's in architecture from the University of Michigan. It's my pleasure today to welcome Taylor Korslin.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for being here today. And I want to thank the Rotary for inviting us to speak at this great event. Just a show of hands really quick, who took 794 in some way to get here this morning? All right, about 50%. So we're speaking to the right crowd in this great location and a timely debate about what to do with 794. So I want to just introduce the team that we've been working with for the last over a year now. It started with 1,000 Friends of Wisconsin, which is a nonprofit that advocates for housing, environmental, and transportation issues throughout the state. But we've kind of come along and grown our support, and this group of people have really moved the conversation forward. So, and I'll say that is all volunteer effort by those individuals. So what prompted us to start thinking about this is about a year ago now, the Department of Transportation came out and said that they need to replace this stretch of freeway stretching from the Hone Bridge to roughly the public market with something. They have to replace it, and they proposed that it would cost about $300 million to replace that. And so we asked, is this again the best way we can use this land? And it's been asked before. This discussion has happened over the course of the last 50 years, but every time it comes up again where the DOT says, hey, we need to replace something in this stretch, it's brought up. And so this time is a little bit different because we have a lot of forward thinkers, a lot of people discussing this issue online and in their offices and places of work. The mayor also has a big ambition to grow the city, and what better way to grow it from within the best parts of it, I would say. There is 32 acres of publicly owned land under this stretch of freeway that stretches from the Hone Bridge to the Marquette interchange. And so we did a quick study initially to look at what the value of this land might be. And so this is probably the most valuable land in the state. And we estimated that it might be worth $1.5 billion in potential development, which also includes public space, but would contribute to the tax base in a substantial way. Initially, we were looking at the traffic and seeing that a lot of people use this stretch of freeway to get to downtown, and about 1/3 of the traffic on the freeway actually uses it to pass through downtown. So it's primarily a commuter kind of stretch to get people delivered to their destination. And to clarify, this is not talking about the Home Bridge. This is a vital connection to the South Shore communities and would remain in any of the DOT's proposed options that you may have seen a few weeks ago. We are talking about the stretch between downtown and the Third Ward. It's roughly 9/10 of a mile and currently acts as a barrier between two of the best neighborhoods. They have a lot going for them. The Third Ward is, a walkable, probably the most walkable area of our city, and the downtown has a lot of prosperity happening there. So we want to see, how could this better be utilized and connected with a street grid that would connect these two neighborhoods that have so much going for them, and actually provide more access. If you're on a city street, you are actually going to your destination in a more efficient manner than to be dropped off kind of boom smack in the middle of the city and then have to make your way in a different way to get to your destination. So this, we think, actually provides more access and multimodal access. And we're talking about this infrastructure. This is 50-year infrastructure, so we got to make the right decision for Milwaukee. This was built in an era where we had parking lots bordering Lake Michigan, and people commuted to the city. Today we're talking about 30-plus story residential towers going up in this area. People want to live here, they want to be here, work here, play here, live here. And then this is kind of the barrier that we're talking about. From a street level perspective, this is what the concrete example of separation is between the downtown and the Third Ward. And this isn't the first time that Milwaukee has talked about freeway removal. In fact, we are shining an example throughout the nation of freeway removal and what could come of it. The Park East in 2003 was removed for half the price of what it would have cost to replace it, and resulted in $1 billion of investment in that corridor, but also $4 billion of development if you include the surrounding context. And that's what we're talking about, the surrounding context. Property values go up. People see more potential in that area if you don't have a freeway bordering your land. And so this is the development that came of that since 2003. The Pfizer Forum in particular, but also lots of residential along the river and the conference center that's going up right now. And likewise, we see a tremendous amount of development happening in the corridor of 794. There, like I said, is 30-plus story residential towers going up. There's headquarters moving to the area. There's a dog park. People want to live and work in this area. So we asked, what could a better future for Milwaukee look like if we envisioned that? And so we looked at this in many different ways, but this is what kind of the status quo would be if we kind of remained what we're doing, we replaced it in kind. You can imagine what it would look like for the next 50 years. And we said that's not good enough. We want to see this infilled and really connect the two, downtown and the Third Ward. And then this is probably the most walkable area in the city, but also has access to the Hop and the Amtrak station. So it could be really a place where people live without cars, if possible. And we envisioned an outdoor public market next to the market today, and a lot of public space, pedestrian streets within that corridor. You may have seen these renderings, but this is a look from the lake, and we're standing today right near the art museum, and what that could look like in the future. This is obviously just one example of what that might look like, but I want to note that this boulevard along Clybourne Street would connect with the Hone Bridge stretch that you see to the left, and provide that access while also allowing the city to grow in a substantial way from within its core. And again, this is looking to the east from the river, and you see that that development, but also a lot of public space. We would love to push the city to include a lot of public space and what is best for all Milwaukeeans. You see not only what could be, but the Heinz building to the right and the Couture to the left are under construction today. And then we looked at it from a ground level perspective and how people actually experience space. And this is the public market and one of the most walkable streets in Milwaukee. And we analyzed that to say, like, why is this so walkable, and why is this so celebrated? Well, it's enclosed space. It's got slow transportation. It's got street trees, wide sidewalks. There's a lot of design decisions baked into the spaces that we love. And so from a ground level perspective, what would that look like? Another example, looking at an expanded public market square, or what the potential is of that space. And this is a view of Clybourne Street today, and what we would envision as a boulevard along that street with parking, bike lanes, wide sidewalks, and 2-lane each direction boulevard. So initially, what got us to this is that this was being talked about a lot online, and the momentum of that is changing with younger people wanting to see the city grow, and living downtown and wanting to stay downtown for a long time. And these renderings just further catalyzed that conversation online and got people talking, but also got a lot of news publicity, and I'm sure you've probably seen this in one of the examples here, but it's even been talked about nationally. We're bringing this debate up 20 years ago from when we removed a freeway in Milwaukee. And it was selected for the Congress for New Urbanism's Freeways Without Futures. They select 10 examples throughout the nation every year, and that's important because a lot of these actually happen over time. So it's an important step. And then I don't have a slide, but the downtown 2040 plan was, like Alex said, we pushed them along with the public to include it in the downtown plan, and the city did include their aspiration to see this removed or substantially bettered. So that takes us to today, and I'll just wrap up kind of discussing what the study that you may have seen a few weeks ago by the Department of Transportation. So initially they were just looking at this stretch to the east of the Milwaukee River, but we wanted to push them towards looking at a different option and look at this more holistically about how the city is going to be for the next 50 years. So they came out with 8 options. As of today, they're narrowing it down because they had their first public meetings. And I'm going to elaborate more on the concept of the removal option. So this was their removal option, which is actually better than we envisioned they would provide. And it really connects the downtown and the Third Ward with that street grid and disperses traffic throughout that grid. First, I'll touch on what Clybourne Street would look like. Well, we have an example of that already in place with the 1 block stretch that's closest to Clybourne Street. It would be a 4-lane, 2-way boulevard, and we would like to see that stretch from Lincoln Memorial Drive to 6th Street. The DOT estimates that around 26,000 cars a day would drive that stretch of freeway. Compared with what is a very walkable street in Chicago, Michigan Ave, that carries 40,000 cars a day. It can be done with a very pedestrian-focused design. And again, wide sidewalks, landscape median, parking spaces, and bike lanes. A lot of people are asking what would be the effect on my commute? Well, we tested it at rush hour many times, and we averaged about 3.5 minutes more than what is your stretch through this area today. So that's from Lincoln Memorial Drive to the interstate past 6th Street is currently a 2-minute drive on the freeway, but about 5.5 minutes if you take city streets. But the trade-off, we think, is a lot of opportunity. There's 10 city blocks that the DOT is estimating they could open up by doing this, and like we said, that could be worth upwards of $1.5 billion of development and public space to best be utilized for all Milwaukeeans. To elaborate a little bit more on how this disperses traffic, it actually has lots of connections to the street grid, and that's important when we're looking at traffic patterns and how to disperse people to where they want to get to. We think this would actually deliver people to where they're going in a more efficient manner. The DOT is estimating that 1/3 of the cars that drive on this stretch today would continue to enter the city at this juncture, while 1/3 would go to the north and 1/3 would go to the south exits. And then that 1/3 of the traffic that enters on this corridor would be dispersed between many streets: 6th Street, Clybourne, St. Paul, Michigan, Wisconsin, Plankington, and Milwaukee Street. When we talk about those city streets, then that comes into play is these movable bridges. And a lot of people ask about how these would work with all of this traffic. And well, the number of 2,100 times a year of the bridges opening is a lot. That amounts to about 10 openings per day. And most of those happen in the evening. But there is a restriction in place today, not well known, but the bridges are restricted from opening during rush hours, and that was set in place in 2021. One more thing to touch on is the port traffic. A lot of people ask, well, this corridor is used by the port, and that delivers a lot of cargo and hard goods throughout the city. Well, what would happen if that was at street level? And most likely, the answer is that they wouldn't continue to use the Hone Bridge to go through downtown. They would use a more direct route with the street of Beecher and Bay Street, and that's about 1/3 the distance of going on the Hone Bridge through downtown. So we want to advocate for designing that in a better way to suit that traffic, and the city is on board with helping in that manner mitigate that traffic impact. And lastly, I want to touch on the costs of all of this have not been elaborated on from the DOT's perspective too much, but those will probably be coming in the next few months. But the Park East is a similar size. This is to scale, and that was removed for half the price to replace it. $45 million then is $75 million today. Of course, 794 has a few more complications with the ramps that all come into play there. but we expect that it would be cheaper actually to replace and make city streets at ground level than to replace what is they're proposing to replace. And then again, in 50 years, we don't have to come back to this discussion and ask for more taxpayer dollars. So I want to wrap up with, thinking about this. Is this the best we can do for the city? Well, we've seen that it's possible and it's feasible. It's a matter now of the political will and the negotiations that might happen with the land use and what could come of that for the city. The study process we're right in the middle of the study process. They're trying to get to a preferred alternative, the DOT is, sometime in 2024. So there's a lot of public engagement with public meetings. And if you follow us on our website, Rethink 794, or subscribe, then we give information on those public meetings. The DOT also releases that widely. But the construction of this is expected to be between 2026 and 2029. And I'll end with this, that are ways to get engaged with this process that's happening. There's feedback that you can submit to the DOT's page directly. You can join our mailing list, and please discuss it with your colleagues and business partners, and consider writing in favor to your alderperson or county executive. So thank you. And I do have I made this whole model, so I made a video of it quickly to give you a little bit more idea of what we're envisioning. This is just, again, one idea about how that might look. This is the dog park remaining from what is being developed today. You're looking at the Milwaukee Public Market and those sport courts to the left. This is Water Street you're passing, and an outdoor public market envisioned for that space. I have some fun music to this, but I didn't include that in this round. And then this is like a public corridor that we envisioned for a very walkable neighborhood. Lots of trees and density of buildings. The city of Milwaukee, we see, is really maturing, and there's a lot of momentum happening in this area again. This is that boulevard along Clybourne Street, and the Couture to the right. So that's it.
If you have a question for Taylor, please keep it concise.
Okay. I promise I'm not going to give my opinion, but I have lived on 3rd and St. Paul for 20 years. So I was there during the Marquette interchange construction. And it was my observation that traffic magically found its way to where it was going without significant congestion. And I guess my question is, have you looked at or been able to access the traffic data from that time to identify, what people did when they couldn't use that 794 corridor?
Yeah, so we did look at that, and so yeah, in 2003 and 2013, those were construction periods that where 794 was not being utilized, and traffic made its way through through the city streets and dispersed in a really efficient manner. I'll point you to Guard. Picor is actually the one that really studied this, and so he can kind of elaborate on that. But traffic did work out, and it wasn't this big jam of traffic on all the city streets. So thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Two questions. First, to piggyback on that, do we know what the impact would be in terms of backup? So has there been any studies on what we would anticipate? Those of us that are coming into the city said it's about 3 minutes added for getting through to the lakefront, but what would be the impact in terms of potential backup? And the second question is, how long would construction take, or deconstruction as the case may be, and what would be the impact also to those of us who commute in during that time?
Yeah, so the DOT is releasing more on this as we go through the process. They have discussed kind of the backup question and how that they call it loading capacity on the freeways. So if say there was an intersection with streetlights at 6th Street and Clybourne Street coming from 94 to the east, there is that capacity on 94 to kind of backload at a stoplight, slow down traffic, backload at a stoplight, and then when the stoplight turns, it kind of disperses on 6th Street, Clybourne, St. Paul. So the DOT is probably the one that can give you more substantial numbers, but and then obviously the Hone Bridge on that side has a lot of potential for loading onto the city streets at a stoplight. So and then there would be multiple intersections there to disperse that traffic. So I hope that answers the question. And then to the construction timeline, that's 2026 to 2029. And I can't speak a lot to what they would do with traffic engineering during that time, but similarly to what they're doing with the interstates now, I know there's a lot of backups on what they're doing with 43 to the north, but at that time, I don't know. That'd be kind of a DOT question.
Hey Taylor, Brent Halfwasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach. I love the rendering. When they took the Park East Freeway out, in my opinion, nothing happened for at least 10 years until the Bucks essentially threatened to leave the city or give us control of all this land so it can actually be developed. I don't fault the Bucks for that because I think nothing happened there until that happened. Why is this going to be any different? Because both of those are in prime corridors, and quite frankly, no development, not meaningful development happened until a more large organization with the power to sway the government intervened. How are these? I mean, this is almost the same number of city blocks. It might be more in fundamentally the same area, offset by a half mile. How is that going to be different? And what happens if in 20 years there's no development besides a torn freeway, very much like Park East still is to some degree now?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of lessons learned from that, and we had the former planning director of the city, Peter Park, come in and give a kind of lessons learned on the Park East talk with the city and public. And so we learned a lot from that process. And I'll say the Park East it was torn down in 2003. Then we had a recession in 2008. And we, probably the obvious lesson learned is don't give all the land to the Bucks for $1. But yeah, so the city, we're pushing them to go through a very public process of envisioning what this corridor could look like, because they would be the ones that, another lesson learned is that, the city's Department of Development should be the one controlling the process of what happens with the land. The land is owned by a just random kind of assortment of the city, county, and state. And so the best way to do it is consolidate it with the city, the Department of City Development then puts out RFPs for the land, and then pays back the state or this county for whatever the cost of land needed to be. What else with that? Yeah. Oh, and then the momentum of the corridor. This corridor has a lot more momentum today than that corridor did in 2003. Like way more. So this is a place. The Third Ward is blowing up. This is a place where we see that development would happen much faster. Another thing that we want to push from our group is, yeah, the use of that land in the intermediate. All this development doesn't happen overnight, and we want to see that space be used in a better way than just sit there for 10 years possibly. And so finding ways to engage that space, there's lots of unique ways to do that with developers all over the country that are activating spaces that are not used, and I'm sure you could come up with with some activations for that space. There's a lot of talk about using park space in the intermediate time until that can be developed. So.
Your presentation was aesthetically very beautifully and well presented. I, however, live on Erie Street, have for 16 years. I'm advised by a group of people in our condominium association that there are 70,000 vehicles that go on 794 a day. I'm advised that there are 40,000 vehicles that go across the Hone Bridge every day. Among those vehicles, there are in excess of 10,000 trucks that do that. I would like you to answer, who is it that believes that that volume of traffic will be able to make it up and down the relevant area on a daily basis if you take down 794? We don't think it does.
Yeah, well, I'd love to show that condo association this presentation, because I hope that answered a few of those questions. Like I said, Clybourne Street, they're estimating 26,000 cars on that street. A 2-lane boulevard in each direction, 4 lanes total, could handle that capacity. And then, like I said, 1/3 of those cars currently today would disperse to the north, 1/3 to the south on those exits, because people currently use 794 because it's the quickest route. It dumps you right downtown, and then even if you live in even if you live north of Brady Street, you might use that. And North Ave might be a better route for you directly, but so yeah, there's going to be a trade-off of a little bit more time for that traffic, but it will disperse throughout the city. We're pretty confident about that. I hope that the DOT can provide some more solid numbers for those folks that are questioning that. And yeah, just that it would disperse throughout those streets. And it's proven throughout the country, if you remove a freeway, the street grid does disperse traffic, and it usually works out. I can't point to an example that it didn't work out.
Thanks for a very good presentation, thought-provoking. I was around with Park East when we talked about that. My office is in the Brewery District, and of course that's another cluster along with the Deer District that resulted in the transformation of that area. And you said it's different, of course, because we had the bucks coming in with the New York thinking and New York money. So my question is this: in post-COVID era, how can you look at this area in terms of potential for investment, given the reluctance of many investors to take the long road instead of the short road to return on investment in places like this?
Yeah, thank you. So first, for one, you remove the freeway, all the property values are up immediately. And there are developers that are coming into this town looking for, the Hines development is putting up 300 apartments in a very tough location to do it. These would be easier locations and in the best area, arguably, between Third Ward and downtown. very walkable, and where people want to be. I don't know. Does that answer the question, or?
That's what, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a huge fan of taking down 794. I'm really excited to see this presentation. The question I asked the previous presentation on this was, do you think that there's an ability for this area to also become a center of public transport? When you have people coming from the west or south, having a place to leave cars and take public transport throughout the rest of the city, is that something that you've imagined? Because it seems like it would be a way to increase use of the hop, increase use of buses, things like that, and bicycles.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of momentum about public transportation. The bus rapid transit. Yeah, this is the corridor of public transportation. We've got the Amtrak, the HOP, and the bus rapid transit. Lots of buses besides the bus rapid transit in this area. So yes, this would be the corridor of public transit, and how people arrive to the city and then use those facilities to get to where they're going would be one, but also the people that would eventually live in this space that we're advocating for. This is an extremely public transit friendly area, and they could possibly live without cars, especially when you're talking about the future of driverless cars and more of that public transit.
Hi, Taylor. I'm James Heffernan. I'm with the Harborfront Condominium Association. I'm on the board. So Frank mentioned our building and that you'd like to get out in front of us, which would be great. But for our board, we unanimously oppose the project of tearing down 794. I'm trying to wrap my mind around, increased density, more buildings, and less infrastructure for traffic and what that would mean for the area. The Third Ward is connected, from our point of view, to downtown. It's very walkable. You had one picture, I think that was Jackson, right? But it's very walkable. It's very accessible. And I feel, and our board feels, that by taking down the infrastructure, taking down the highways, I'll point to an example where we just had a concert with the Luminaires. Oh, okay. Oh, sure, sorry. So I guess I could ask a question. So what is any studies that you could provide us that address our concerns with congestion, accessibility to downtown? If it's not accessible, perhaps less people come downtown. That would hurt commerce, hurt small business. We love our small businesses. We love our area. So we're looking for studies, information, details, facts that would help us understand how increased density, less traffic infrastructure, how that won't affect our livelihood, our quality of life, the accessibility to the city. So I do appreciate it, Taylor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd love to talk with you more about those studies and more substantial numbers on that. And yeah, I hope this presentation cleared up a little bit of that, how that traffic would disperse through the city. Let's talk with Gard a little bit more about that traffic studies and more afterwards. Thank you.
We have a really good case example in Milwaukee. Thank you. We have a really good case example in Milwaukee alone. Commuters are historically not big spenders. They don't spend a lot of money at lunch. They don't spend a lot of money outside of just coming in and parking. There was a huge concern when the Park East was torn down by the owners of the Pick and Save in Park East at the River Point Plaza. Their lease was tied to the revenue generated at the grocery store. That the Park East dumped right in front of the grocery store prior to its removal, and they were worried that there was going to be a huge, change in demand. They were going to see a huge loss of revenue. What actually ended up happening is that as the neighborhood densified, all those condos were built, they saw revenue skyrocket after the park east was removed. And to do that, the only reason the metro market was built next to Pick and Save by the same owner was to offload some of the revenue, which was tied to their lease at Pick and Save, and build a second grocery store that they owned a couple blocks away. Bob Monnet made that point at our presentation at Marquette. The more you densify, the more people that you get in the neighborhood, the greater the spending, the greater density of businesses you have as well. And there's case studies like this all over the country where that's occurred.
You keep making the comparison between the Park East and this removal. The Park East didn't have 100,000 trucks coming from the port, or didn't have the through traffic. What were the traffic comparison numbers for that? And also, one of the things you pointed out in the Park East removal is there was some land that had been reserved for future connection actually to this spur along the lake that hadn't been developed, that didn't have any infrastructure, that needed to be removed. It was parkland that was then made available for development. Here you talk about freeway land being made available for parks, which doesn't generate revenue. So I don't know that those two comparisons work. So how do you justify that comparison on traffic specifically between Park East and what you're proposing here? And by the way, the other option thing was to say is Beecher Street isn't a shorter way for those 100,000 trucks to go west on the interstate. You made the comment in your slides show that the Beecher Street is a third shorter than going through 794.
Well, I made the comment that it's a third shorter to the interstate system. So they would get to the interstate system faster if they went on Beecher and Bay Street. It's a mile roughly versus going over the Hone to the west.
Right now they go right to the interstate system.
Yeah, the 794 is the interstate system, yes. Yeah. Well, if it were removed, it wouldn't be the interstate system, and trucks wouldn't go through downtown. The first question you had. I don't have that off the top of my head. The 35 to 40,000 cars a day. Yeah, it's a different circumstance. There are a substantial number of cars on this stretch, and we think with the DOT releasing more information about those traffic numbers that this city streets can handle that if it's dispersed throughout the city. Thank you.